all of a sudden, from Jeroboam's time, we keep hearing about high places. Now we tend to think high places means a hill. It's not necessarily a hill. It could be on the city entrance, right? Here's a high place. This is a high place. That's a bama over there. That's like a podium, an altar on a high place. And the stone standing there is a standing stone. It's a matzeva, standing stone that comes to represent. So the standing stone basically represents the presence of God. And the high place is where you do the actual worship. Now for Judaism, of course, you didn't have to have anything that represents the presence of God. Because the whole idea of the temple was that the inside of the temple is an empty room. That was a concept that wasn't familiar to non-Jews. So when you tell a non-Jew about the temple of the Jewish God in Jerusalem, they expect to find a statue standing in the center, and you say, no, the center room is kind of like empty. They couldn't understand this concept that this God has no name, no presence, no physical evidence. So what made the Jews all of a sudden start worshiping in this manner rather than going to Jerusalem?
Divided a kingdom.
It's connected to politics, like most things. And what happened is Solomon died. Solomon, at the end of his kingdom, became very greedy because he had all those 1,000 wives to support, 1,000 mother-in-laws to support, and all of foreign temples and everything around that. He started charging lots and lots of taxes. Solomon died, his son Rehoboam takes over. The people sent people to Rehoboam. They say, we're going to be yours forever if you just easy on the taxes. And he says, let me consult. He goes consulting his advisors. The wiser people say, listen to them, they're going to be yours. His buddies say, go show them who you are. So he comes back in a very graphical way. He says, you think my father was bad? You ain't seen nothing yet. Just wait and see. They don't like that answer, and so they rebel against him, and they appoint a guy named Jeroboam, who, by the way, was promised that kingdom by God himself, because God said, I'm not happy with the way Solomon runs things. This kingdom is going to be divided, you're going to be king. So if Jeroboam had enough faith, he only had to wait, and he would be the leader of that northern kingdom. They rebelled, took over, and now Jeroboam is the leader of this northern kingdom, from Dan to Bethel, north of Jerusalem, and Rehoboam is the leader of 2.5 tribes from Bethel to Beersheba, including Jerusalem. And then Jeroboam thinks to himself, so here comes the high main holidays, and people will go to Jerusalem to the temple because that's what they're supposed to do. And over there in the temple they will meet with Rehoboam, he'll change their mind, they'll come back, they'll get rid of me, and they will go follow Rehoboam again. How am I going to prevent that? Make it easy for them. We'll say, why do you have to walk 2 weeks to Jerusalem and 2 weeks back? Here's a temple, not here, in the middle of the city. Here's an altar, which I put. Here's a god. That's the golden calf. Why a golden calf?
Yeah.
Because that's something they were familiar with. Because remember the golden calf when they left Egypt? When Moses went up on the mountain, didn't come back for 40 days, they said, that's it, he's gone, left us alone. They went back to what they knew, and that is making a golden calf and worshipping it. That's what Jeroboam did. He put a golden calf, built a temple, made it look like the temple in Jerusalem, appointed priests who were not from the tribe of Levi, set a holiday on the same day, wrong month, but made it all look alike and said, here's a substitute for the temple. Actually, he did two. One in Bethel, one in Dan, one in the south, one in the north, and told people from the whole Israel kingdom, go there. Why going to Jerusalem? And everybody started worshiping. And together with that, of course, if it's no longer the temple in Jerusalem, then why should I go to Dan? I can just set up a high place in my backyard and put a standing stone and keep worshiping. I still worship God. They don't worship foreign gods. Still worship God. Later, with Ahab and Jezebel and others, they said, if I don't go to Jerusalem and if I have a high place and if I worship a standing stone, let's throw in another small statue of Baal or small statue of Asherah. Doesn't make any difference. And that's how things kind of like escalate. Mm-hmm. And the punishment for that would be, by Jeremiah, the northern enemy coming and conquering this whole northern kingdom. Who was the northern enemy that arrived in the 7th century BC? The Assyrians. They came, controlled the whole northern kingdom, all the way to Jerusalem. Stopped at Jerusalem. Jerusalem was under danger. Hezekiah, the king of Jerusalem at the time, fortifies the city walls, built Hezekiah's water tunnel. We'll talk about that. Kind of like take measures to protect Jerusalem. One day he wakes up, looks for the window, Assyrians are gone. They left Jerusalem and went back to Assyria, and that south kingdom was spared just to be destroyed by the Babylonians at 586 BC. The thing is that Assyrians had a way when they conquered the land. They would wipe out the land, take everybody, move them to another place in the Assyrian Empire, and bring people from the Assyrian Empire and put them instead. Why would they do that? So they would disconnect you from your roots and basically prevent you from rebelling again. Some of those foreigners they brought assimilated with some of the Jews that left here and created this new religion called Samaritans. And that's why Jews traditionally were enemies to the Samaritans, because they never saw Samaritans as real Jews. They saw Samaritans as assimilated Jews with foreigners. Babylonians, on the other hand, if you remember, had a different policy. They would exile only the elite. That's why when Jerusalem was destroyed, only the rich, intellectual people were exiled to Babylonia, but the majority of people were stayed here. Which, 70 years later, when Babylonia itself was taken by the Persians, and Cyrus said, it's fine for you to go back to your homeland and rebuild the temple, they could come, few of them, not all, could come, led by Ezra and Nehemiah and Zerubbabel, and rebuild what we call the Second Temple, the return to Zion. So we are now in the city that was destroyed by the Assyrians in the 7th century BC. This was a classical First Temple period city. Let's go to the gates and we can talk a little bit more. Here's the city gate of Dan. Now, do you see the gate when you look? Like, do you see how the gate is built? There's an outer gate, right? There. You enter into the city. There's like a gate complex, right? You make a right turn. There's another gate over there, right? An inner gate. Then you make a turn and enter the city. Why going like this?
Protection.
Obviously, it slows you down when you come in. You can't just go into the city. It slows down. You have soldiers around, protection and everything. But why this huge area at the city entrance?
Congregating place.
Because city gate is not just a gate. In the biblical time, city gate is the courtroom, the municipality, the chamber of commerce, the place of the elderly people. Remember the book of Ruth? Ruth came to look for Boaz, who was one of the elderly people of the city of Bethlehem. He was seated at the city gates with the elderly. So at the city gate, the king or the judge would sit right here where I stand. Right here. Original seat. Right, literally here. The elderly people of the city would sit right there on those sitting benches. Court secretary would sit somewhere around here. And people would come and bring their cases in front of the king. Remember that when God says to Moses, appoint judges and officers, they should sit at your city gates and judge the people. So that's where it comes from. So this is like a central place where justice is not only done, but also seen by the people. And this is where you first come to the city, you bring all your first things. So you come here, they will kind of like question you, what's the purpose if you come? You bring news, you bring gossip, you bring business, commercial, all sorts of things. Everything happens in the city gates. All the gates from that period of time, 3,000 years ago, 2,900, 2,800 years ago, built the same way. It's a concept of outer gate, inner gate, and basically a gatehouse. Going through the city and going all the way up to the city will take you to the sacred place of city where Jeroboam put that altar and where he set kind of like the temple. But then is also mentioned in an earlier period than Jeroboam. Jeroboam is about 3,000 years ago. Then is mentioned also in the period of 4,000 years ago. That's the time of who?
Abraham.
Of Abraham. And that is mentioned where? Which book?
Genesis.
Genesis, obviously, because that also talks about Abraham. So where is it mentioned in Genesis?
13 to 25.
Never mind the chapter, just the story, the event. Remember there was a famous war against Abraham and his household. 5 kings of the north fighting against 4 kings of the south. They won, they took a lot of property, and they also took Lot, the nephew of Abraham. And Abraham, the Bible says, chased them from the Dead Sea, south, to Dan, to here, and brought back Lot and all his property and went back. So that next gate we're going to see, which is an older gate of Dan, is called the Abrahamic gate, or the Canaanite gate, which is the gate from 4,000 years ago.
Obviously, they did not have aluminum in Jeroboam's time. But this is the location of the full altar where the golden calf would have been, and they brought their sacrifices. Sometimes if you look at your Bible history pictures or your Sunday school pictures, you'll always see little altars. Remember, they have to sacrifice whole animals on these things, so it's larger. They designed this to show you also what are known as the horns of the altar. Horns of the altar, the corners. That's horn always stood for power and might. But if you were in trouble and you went into the temple and hung to the horns of the altar, that was sanctuary. All right, no one could hurt you there or harm you there. All right. Yeah, too bad for Joab on that one. But this is why I just, to me, to come back here, this is where Jeroboam built it. And as Moshe pointed out, it's all political. If you go down to Jerusalem and see the good things there, no one's going to want to come back. Now, we made the trip from the Sea of Galilee, what was it, 45 minutes or so? Pretty easy ride, air conditioned, it was raining, no problem, and things. That's a hike. If you're thinking of going from here to where we were, and then farther down to Jerusalem. So, oh, hey, if I don't have to go there, fine. It's kind of like having a branch bank. If you think about it, why did they put branch banks all around? So they'll service you and you won't go someplace else that's closer. And so this is the location as far as they've done. They've done some other excavating. You can see some of the signs and things that are there about what all was involved here. They have the granaries, they have the various areas where they would house things and things. Comments or thoughts on anything? I know this was maybe a long walk in the mud. Pardon? Area, that one I believe was rebuilt. That section there was rebuilt. This is built on the site that they figured would be. Pardon?
I don't believe that was rebuilt.
That wasn't rebuilt. This is all part of it here.
Keeping us off of it. We used to be able to go up.
Used to be able to go out there, and actually that's why he told me I have to take the path back with you folks, because there used to be an old path that we could take that went around the hill and came down at the other end. And he says we'd get lost. Who would start the counts? Okay. So
Number
thoughts?
42.
Pardon?
Number 42.
Number 42. Anyone else have comments or thoughts? Yes.
Was it the center of the city? So the city would have extended?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
And not necessarily. It was that he built it here in the high place. Like I said, center of the city. Probably goes that way yet. Goes that, if they get a shovel. They say anybody in Israel who puts a shovel in the ground is an amateur archaeologist, because you don't know what's underneath. The state, and Moshe will explain this, the state owns all the property. You actually rent your property from the state. So if you were to dig on your property and find any artifacts, it belongs to the state. It's not yours. Okay? Very well could be. Very well could be. But the whole thing took place here, and this is why they came. It made this very popular. You notice the ways we came in. Picture, if you would, and you'll probably be able to see it better when we go to Beit Shan, which is a Roman city. But when you think of this city and look at what's being dug, there were roads, paths, alleys, houses connected. A lot of houses connected. You'll see that at Capernaum. The walls of the houses are connected. Why? Because, hey, if I don't have to build 4 walls and only build 3, it's cheaper for me, a little easier. If you think of many of our old downtowns, stores shared a wall. Why? Because they didn't have to build a 4th wall. They did the same thing back there. Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. Well, he was right.